Reshape meeting. Thank you so much for attending. I am so excited to announce our guest speaker today. For those of you who know Tom O'Rourke, he really doesn't need an introduction. But for those of you who are having the pleasure of hearing him for the first time, I do want to let you know he is a lifelong parks and recreation professional. So he's been in the practice. He's done what we're doing at every level. So you're definitely going to get something out of his talk today, I assure you. He is currently a professor of practice at Clemson University and works as an in-house parks consultant for Brandstetter Carroll Incorporated. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you to Tom O'Rourke, the future of parks and recreation. Tom?
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody. I love the breakout rooms. I see a lot of very, very familiar faces, and I'm happy to be here. It's it's interesting to think about what you're going to say when you come on. And Edwin in the last breakout group asked me what I was going to talk about, and I said I don't know. I have 4 more minutes left to figure it out. But my talks, for those who've heard me, it's you've heard it before. You know, I am so passionate about this profession. I'm so passionate about what we do. I'm so passionate about people that it all comes out. And um a lot of the things, you'll hear different words, you'll hear different stories, but it's going to be the same message. I Some of you I've run into at some of the schools at Ogilvy that I've taught at, and I've taught at all of them. But I remember one time at a director school, I finished the class and these four people came up and they said, "Are you going to teach again?" And I said, "Yeah, I haven't." They said, "Well, what are you teaching?" I said, "It doesn't matter. I say the same thing." And I said, "I'm like Mexican food. You know how you can call it whatever you want, but there's like these same five ingredients that go into whatever you eat." And this dark-haired, little darker complected girl walks up in front of me, and I looked at her and I said, "Are you from Mexico?" And she said, "Yes." "And you've never had Mexican food?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're right." But the cool thing about her, she invited me to speak in Mexico at their first ever national conference. And it was wonderful. And she was right. I never had Mexican food. And it was so I'm anxious to talk today. And I'm going to talk about the future. I like talking about the future because no one knows if I'm right until like 5 or 6 or 10 years from now. So that helps. But I kind of feel strongly about the things that I'm going to say today. And I'm not really good at today. I'm not good at details. I know that. But I can see 30 years as clear as a bell. I've done sessions at NRPA. I remember one that I did about 20 years ago called Recreation 2025. And at that time, it was like, whoa, 2025. We're at 2025 almost. And it's so good to go back and look at those things and see where we are now. But for those that don't know me, I'm like you. I was in the field. I worked in the field. I got yelled at by people like you. I worked with the staff. I've worked with commissioners and elected people, but I've been doing this a long time. So I kind of have seen almost everything, and I've learned from it. What I want to talk about today, Jen was right when she said I've been in Parks and Recreation all my life. My father was a recreation director. My vacations as a child were going to the Pennsylvania State Recreation Conference. And it was really fun because I was a little kid. We had no money. We would go to a hotel. We would put quarters in the bed and it would move around. And it was really a fun thing as a child, just remembering all of those memories. So I grew up in this field. And I remember when I was in college, and I was one of those people that just went to college. I played basketball. Um, and like I was a junior, and the advisor said, "You have to choose a major." And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. And they said, "Well, what do you like?" And I said, "Well, I like basketball. And I just had such an appreciation for what my father did. I went into the recreation field, and it's been great to do that. But I want to talk a little bit about the history of our field and where it was and where I think it's going. That's the topic for today. But in the old days, when my father was a recreation director, they gave the governments gave cities money and the recreation people programmed activities. That was it. They had money, they spent it, they put on fun things, mostly for children, mostly playground activities, mostly youth activities. And then the years started to move by, and about 55 years ago or so, people started to get into the money game. They started to charge for things. And it changed a lot. It created some very interesting discussions about should we, shouldn't we, and those type of things. And we got so caught up in should we charge, should we not charge, that we kind of, for some agencies, the pendulum moved so far to the right, um, that it became all about money. And that's where it really, I think, became a problem. I believe, and I truly believe this, our profession is at the best spot it's ever been in, ever. And our future, here's what I think you're going to be dealing with in the next 10 or 15 years. There isn't any money. So very little tax money is going to be going to our field. Some will, but it's going to be difficult. The next thing, I think we are going to be working in the future with more vendors and partners than we are by just saying to our elected people, I need 4 more employees so I can go do this or I can go do that. It's going to be tough. Cities now have to set aside money in their budget for post-employment benefits. And their solution, city administrators are saying the solution is don't hire new people. Well, I know this. I don't care where you are, Maryland, wherever. Your citizens want you to do more and more and more. So how you do it, I think, is going to be important. So I think we're going to be using vendors. I think we're going to be using partners, but we have to make sure we're the ones deciding what's going to be done in our park systems, not them. We're not going to take a call and somebody says, hey, can I use your facilities because I'm going to run a so-and-so. No, it has to be what you want. We can't let our facilities be used for someone to just make private money. It has to fit into your situation. The next thing, I think we can't give it away anymore. And I don't know how many of you are doing this, but we have private athletic clubs coming into our fields and they're making tons of money. And we have to mow the grass, we have to pack the pitchers' mounds, we have to line the fields off, and they complain to us if it's not to a certain standard while we're doing the work. And I think that that's difficult. We're going to have to look at that whenever we move into the future. So we just are not going to be able to give it away like we have in the past. I think people are going to be looking at numbers. People are going to be looking at the capacity for the work that we can do. So you're going to have to keep track of things. And I think that that's not a bad thing. I think that pricing is going to be important. How we price things is important. We have to make sure that there's business applications to that. I notice in a lot of departments, we price things for the 20% of the people that can't pay instead of the 80% of people that can. So when we say, oh my goodness, that's a lot of money, I don't want to go up in the fees, so-and-so can't pay. Well, guess what? 80% of them can. And we keep the fees low. Now, never in my life will I price somebody out of anything, any program. We are not for people with money. But there's a reality of cost to what we do. And I promise you, and this isn't for today's discussion, but it's one of my favorite. How do we build those nonprofits and those foundations to help us raise money from people that have money for the great things that you're doing so that you don't have to just constantly burden the taxpayers because you're not going to get tax money. But I don't care where you are in Maryland. There's really wealthy people around you, really wealthy people with a heart. And if your stories are compelling enough, they'll give. If you have a nonprofit that helps with their tax status, that's the direction that I think you need to go into. The other thing, and this is the last thing before I get into the crux of what I want to talk about, you're going to have to be a little bit more politically astute. Yeah, I hear people say, I hate politics. Well, you know what? Yeah, so does everybody else. But if you hate it and you run away from it, you're going to suffer. You've got to manage it. You've got to learn how to manage it. And people that govern you, they're there for a reason. And even though sometimes it's ego or whatever, they do care about what we do. And they care about helping people. We're the department that everybody loves. So we're going to have to make sure that rather than running from the elected people that fund us and support us, we need to run to them. We need to make them part of our plans and part of those things. But here's what I want to talk about today. I think the most important things that we need to do in our profession in the future is we are going to have to get in the game of fixing the things that make communities better. Look at the last year. There's a lot of crap going on in this country right now. And guess what? We fix it. We fix it. I'm going to talk and I'm going to elaborate on 3 things that I think are really important that we could and should focus on. The first, just to be as direct as I can be, we got racial problems in this country that are dividing us. And I think the Parks and Recreation profession fixes this. We're the ones that can unify. We can facilitate discussions. They're tough discussions, but they're discussions we have to have. A couple nights ago, Monday night, I was on a Zoom call with 4 of my really, really, really close friends that I trust. And this discussion of race is really important to me. But I'm smart enough to know that 63-year-old white guy with gray hair is going to have a hard time standing in front of a bunch of people leading a discussion on race. So I called 4 really close friends. One of them's in Maryland, Roz Johnson. A lot of you know Roz. What I like about Roz is she has a voice. Sometimes it bothers people, but so what? But she's someone that I trust. There's a guy named Corey Wilson down in Baton Rouge. Corey's one of the most brilliant people we have in our profession. Malik Willoughby in Columbus, Ohio. Malik is a guy, and what I'll do to people that are like 40 or so, 35, I'll get in their life and I'll say, what's next for you? What's next for you? How about this job? How about that job? Malik looked at me one day and said, I got 100 kids that think I'm their father. I can't go anywhere. That's when I fell in love with Malik Willoughby. He knows what his job is. He knows why he's on this earth. And the last person was Shonda Smith down in Mobile, Alabama. 4 African-American people that I just wanted to have a discussion with. So I did my little Zoom thing, and I told them that I don't want this to go too long. And I said, I'm only going to take an hour of your time. Well, it lasted 2 hours and 15 minutes. And the discussion was about what can we do as a group of 5 people to move this ball forward. And again, I think it's all about discussion. And here are my thoughts. So if you could just get mad at me for this, but this is what I think until somebody changes my mind. I think white people, for the most part, kind of care. They don't know how to take the first step. I don't know what the first step is. That's why I was on that phone call. But I want to do something. But we get uncomfortable with these discussions. And we can't. No, I take that back. We can, but we have to be in a safe environment for us to be able to talk about race. When an African American tells you the story and the analogy of the Monopoly game, which you've heard, which the world started playing Monopoly a long time ago, and all the properties got purchased, and hotels got put on all the properties, and all the railroads got owned. And then they told African Americans they were equal. Come and play Monopoly. So they rolled the dice and they landed on somebody's property and they had to pay. Then they rolled the dice again and landed on somebody's property. And technically, they wanted to go to jail. So they didn't have to pay. That makes white people uncomfortable because it's true. And you can't have a discussion about reparations in this country. It makes everybody too nervous. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the first step is. But damn it, I know I've got to take it. And I'm getting people that I trust in my circle to help me go to the next step. We have to be comfortable with these decisions. I know this. When a child is born, whatever race they're in, they're not racist at that time. That's taught. We need to be putting our younger kids in programs together. I remember a picture that we had when I worked in Charleston County Parks, and we liked our pictures to be as diverse as possible, but sometimes if you went over the line, it kind of bothered me. And we had a picture of these kids in a swimming pool, and there was the exact number of African Americans, Asian, every single thing you could think of in this picture. And I walked down to Gerald, African-American guy in my marketing department. I said, Gerald, what do you do, man? We don't do this. And he looked at me and he just smiled. And he just said, that's your adventure camp. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And so it was working by itself. The kids in that camp, they didn't see the color at that age. They played with each other. They got along with each other. What other community or environment other than school, but in school, you're kind of sitting around behind your books doing all that work, can we put everyone together and have that type of experience? So we need to be talking about this. You need to be talking about this with your staff, with your customers, and with every single person you come in contact with. Once you start doing that, your community is going to change. There is no finish line to this discussion. There is no light switch moment where we say, oh, it's all better now. It's not happening. But we can move the ball. Our profession can move that ball. And it's something that I want you all to get in the game of. The second thing that I feel as strongly about, I'm going to read you some statistics about teen suicide. We've got people, young people, killing themselves at a rate that is higher than we've ever had in this country. And the arrow keeps going up. Little girls wake up every day and they look at their phone to see if who likes them and who doesn't like them and how they should feel about themselves. But the numbers are staggering. Suicide's the second leading cause of death for people age 10 to age 24. Second. Suicide's the second leading cause of death for college age students. More teenagers, more young adults die from suicide than cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, stroke, pneumonia, flu, lung disease combined. Every day, there's an average of, every day, hear me, 3,700 attempts by young people to kill themselves. Every single day. But here's the thing to remember. 4 out of 5 of these attempts, these people have given clear signs, clear warning signs that they were going to do it. What's our role in that? These are our kids. These are the people that we need to be serving. But a lot of us have baseball, football, basketball, all-star games, and who gets a college scholarship. Not that there's anything wrong with that, But as the great athletes start falling out of your programs, they're going home. They're going somewhere different. And I don't know what your programs are like, and I hope they're not like this, but the ones I see, once you start hitting around these ages, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, we don't have a lot of them. We should. We need to get in that game. We built a skate park in Charleston. Doesn't have a damn thing to do with skating. Nothing to do with skating. We've got a disenfranchised group of people that couldn't get anything. And we built a skate park, a really, really, really nice skate park, $6 million. And I like to go down there on Friday night at midnight because there's 200 kids in that park, sometimes more. 6 or 7 are skating. It's a safe place for them to go. Kids that age, they're not looking for your program, okay? They're not looking for the dance. They're not looking for any of it. They're not coming to that. They want to hang out with each other and they want to be around each other. And they want to play music and they want to do all of that. And so I think that we need to be paying very particular attention to those types of things and looking at that age group for us to be getting into that market. They're falling off, my friends, and the numbers get higher every year. And I promise you that's our responsibility. We can fix it. These are just self-esteem problems, okay? And I think that that's the job we're in, hopefully. We're in the self-esteem business. The third thing that I think is really important is health and wellness. We learned in the pandemic that if you're old and healthy, you got sick and you made it through. If you were old and very, very unhealthy, you died. Staying in good health is important to the rest of the world. And you know what's interesting? I don't know if we're in that game like we should be. We need to be totally immersed in that game. And what we don't realize is how much money is being spent every year in these things. Now I'm gonna read off a couple of numbers for you. Healthy eating, weight loss, $702 billion is spent a year. Wellness tourism. You're in Maryland. You got some of the greatest tourist attractors ever. $639 billion spent. Fitness, wellness, $500 billion. All of these things, I can go down a big long list. People are spending $3 trillion on this stuff. But you're not getting the money. They're not spending it with you. They're spending it with everybody else. Why not you? You got some of the best hospitals in the world in Maryland, in the world. And they all want to partner with you. And you're smart. You can figure it out. Figure out how you put together this community problem and charge for it. They're spending like crazy for this stuff. You have the greatest atmospheres out there in your park system. And the one thing COVID taught us, as soon as everything went terrible, and as soon as they shut down the world, everybody went to their park, and everybody walked, and everybody ran, and everybody rode their bike in numbers like we've never seen before. So we need to capitalize on that right now. And we need to be in that business. Now, what I want to talk about now, though, not just stating the obvious, I want to talk about solutions. And I want to talk about what you can do to be that agency that's ready in the future. And there's 4 groups I want to talk to today. MRPA, your community, your agency, and you. So I'm going to talk about what all 4 can do. You know, I noticed I was watching the slides. I actually went to the 2 breakout sessions, and I listened to everything when everybody sat there this morning and pointed out all the people in the corners that were there, like the Brady Bunch. That was funny. Um, but what I noticed was MRPA has a committee. I'm not sure what it. I think it's social justice, racial equity, and inclusion, and it had all the pictures of everybody that's on it. And I don't know in your agency if you have DEI committees, programs, whatever, but you better be careful, because having the committee doesn't finish the work. And if it becomes a performative thing where you're checking a box, you're not going to get anywhere. I've asked people to come in and talk about this into their agency, and they'll ask me if I can like take step 2, step 3. And if they're not real and they're not seriously considering this, I say I'm not doing it. So I'm not picking on you at all. I'm just saying outcome-based things are good to have when you have diversity, equity, and inclusion committees. And when you have a committee on social justice, racial equity, and inclusion at MRPA. Having the outcomes, making sure it's done, and making it real is really important. So I really commend you for stepping out and being the group that knows this is important and is taking the necessary steps to do this. So that's good. Back to MRPA. I think you've got to have a plan. You have the committee, but I like statewide plans that have goals on ways to impact communities. And it's not just race. It's a lot of things. So having the MRPA 2025, 2035 plan for reshaping parks and recreation is not a bad thing to have. A plan that includes all members, a plan that includes all agencies, a plan that has committees, regions, and brings this whole thing together so that you can be the agency you want to be in 2025. The other thing that scares me about this profession in the future is I've seen some departments, great, amazing departments, that get taken over by the money people. Charlotte Mecklenburg County, one of the best departments I know. Gentleman named Jim Garges was the director. He left, and a person named Michael Kirschman was supposed to just jump into that spot. And Michael did not get the job. The administrator went down the hall to the finance department and brought somebody in to run that department. We cannot let that happen. And there may be finance people with big hearts. I don't know. But as I mentioned before, the business of Parks and Recreation is going to be important to elected people, to the city administrator, and to the public. We got to be in that game. MRPA needs to be teaching government finance. MRPA needs to be teaching working in political environments. The other thing that I think we don't do a great job of, there are so many great things going on in Maryland. There are so many great things going on in your department, and we're not selling it. We're not letting the public know how great we are. And you are doing amazing things. They need to know this. It's not bragging. It's self-sustaining yourself. So we need to be selling our greatness. But there are hows and whys to do that. I think training in that is in there. The other thing I think needs to be taught is just this whole uncomfortable discussion of entrepreneurial recreation. How do we let that group in? It was mentioned that I teach at Clemson. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. But I'll tell you what I'm teaching. And I tell them, Okay, you're going to graduate. None of you are getting jobs. And they're like, what? And because they're not. You know how many Parks and Rec graduates are being pumped out of every university in this country? You're not hiring anybody. You're not hiring many. And so what I'm teaching is the entrepreneurial aspects of what we do. I want a student with their master's degree to be able to, you know, walk into Rick Anthony and say, Rick, just graduated from school, and I noticed that you don't have a health and wellness program. Here's what I'll do, and I'll do all the work for you. If you just give me a little bit of space, I will make your Arundel County 50% healthier, and then I'll do it again the following year. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to have a health and wellness program for all different levels of fitness. And we're going to put on programs based on their level of fitness. And we're going to measure how people move through that program. And I'm going to keep track of that. And I'm going to have morning yoga, boot camps, 3 5Ks, triathlon series, walking program, I don't know, whatever. And then that person tells Rick, oh, and by the way, I'm going to give the department $30,000. Rick's going to think about that. He's going to think about that. It's like, wait a minute. So I don't have to hire anybody. You're going to make the people in my community healthier, and you're giving me a check for $30,000. Yes. Because the money they make from the 5Ks, the wellness, the boot camps, and all of that under one umbrella program, they're going to make $100,000. Working with the vendors and working with the partners is not a bad thing. It can make your department better, and it can work. So I urge you to look at those things. I think we have to be open to letting outside people in to do what you want them to do, not what they want to do. Before a health and wellness program is done, it's something that you have to think is important, or whatever program is done, or program specifically targeted to the 16 to 20-year-old. So I think that's one way to do it. Okay, that's MRPA. Now your community. I'm going to go back to what I said before. You've got to let them know how great you are. They have to understand the great things you're doing. How? Your newspaper that comes out on Sunday, in that top left corner of the editorial section, you need to know who's writing that. Letter to the editor, you need to know the editor, and you need to have a relationship with them. And you need to be manipulating, I hate to say that word, but you need to be making sure they're on board and that you're feeding them the information to get great things. Usually the newspaper people are like us. They want great things. We went after some of you, I've heard this story, but we have a plantation in Charleston that we felt strongly that we needed to get. It wasn't easy to get, but the Historic Charleston Foundation, who owned it, had no money, and they had to sell it. So they went out, and it boiled down to 3 groups that were going to get this. Charleston County Parks, a really rich person in San Diego, and a really rich person in London. And we ended up getting it. But boy, did I manipulate that thing, because we were the public. I wanted the public to own this building, the site. And I wanted the public to be a part of what we were going to do with that site. And they would write an article, and the editor would write his editorial about why it should go to us. Then he'd write another one, and then he'd send the editorial. And the funny story, I remember, it was a very emotional purchase for me. It gave us an opportunity to have a plantation in Charleston that was very different than all the other plantations in Charleston. Our story is transition to freedom, which is still happening today. by the way. And it was great to be able to tell that story and to get that. But the day they chose us as the recipient, I couldn't sleep, and I woke up and I walked out into that field, and it was early in the morning and smoke was coming up out of the fields. And I was just standing there. My phone rang and I kind of jumped, and it was Charles Rowe from the newspaper, the editor. And he said to me, he said, "We got it." And I said, "Guess where I am?" He said, "Where?" I said, "I'm there right now." And he said, "Are you alone?" And I said, "I don't think I am." And he tells that story, but I wasn't alone that day. All the people from the past were there with me. And that story lives today. And if you ever come to Charleston, South Carolina, and if you're African American, you need to get there quickly. And when you come, start at McLeod Plantation, because it will hurt, but it will be very real. And that's the discussion that I talked about 20 minutes ago when I was talking about needing to have discussions. Those types of things. And you don't need a plantation. There's as much African American history in Maryland as there is in Charleston. You need to tell your stories or create the situation where the dialogue can happen. So that's how you get your community on board. Know the people, sell your greatness. Now, how do you reshape your agency? If you're waiting for things to get back to normal, stop. There isn't any normal. It's not coming back. It's not going to be like it was before. It's not. And it shouldn't be, actually. We need to take a really good, hard, long look at the last 12 months and figure out what we're going to do to make things better. Governments, because of COVID, have way less money. I know people that have been laid off, and I don't know if they're coming back. Don't be that casualty. Be the person that's going to get that's going to get things done. But you're going to need to figure it out, and it's not that hard. If you get into the social game that I keep talking about, we already are, all of us, but they're not going to be able to get rid of you. They're not going to be able to get rid of you. If you have stories dealing with the committee that's meeting right now for you, the social justice, racial equity, and inclusion committee that you have, if you come out with possible programs to help communities deal with that subject matter, you're not getting cut. You're not getting cut. And when they say defund the police, they don't mean defund the government and give money back to people. They're saying reprioritize money to where we can actually help the disenfranchised that need these types of programs. Don't let the police get into the programming business. Don't let outside groups come in and do that. You're already there. Money's there for that. You don't want them to cut your budget to bring somebody else in to be doing these things. So you've got to be proactive. And you've got to be out there doing that. And you will. So be that agency that sits around and figures out, how are we going to be that agency for the next 10 years? Money's bad now. Social equity is huge now. There's a spotlight there. How do we get in that game? How do we change things? So I think that's what the agency can do. The other thing an agency can do, you don't have to do it all yourself. You can work with outside groups to put on a lot of the things that you do. Split the revenues, you get a percentage, they get a percentage, the public gets a program, and everybody's happy. The other thing I hope you do, from an agency standpoint to help you, you've got to understand philanthropy, and you've got to understand parks foundations or nonprofits, and there is a difference. But like I said earlier on, having the people that every December 31st are figuring out where they're going to write checks for tax reasons, you want to be in that line. And if you have a IRS set up nonprofit or foundation, those donations can come to you and those people can get a tax break. They have a big heart, but they also have tax problems. And you've got these people in Maryland everywhere. So I would find a way to tell your story and get it done. You just can't ask for money. Okay? You need to have stories that that hit them. I mentioned our skate park, and I took a guy named Mike Messner. You can Google him. He's got more money than anybody anywhere. And he's somebody that I know in Charleston. And he was infatuated with the skate park. When it was being constructed, we would go look at it. And one of the nights, I asked him to come down and meet me there. We were standing there, and I said to him, I said, "What do you see?" And he knew what I meant. I mean, there wasn't a black person in the whole skate park. And I said, look where this is. And so he said, "Well, how are we going to do it?" I said, "Well, we can't wait for people from the community to come in. We've got to go to them. We got to figure out how to do it." And he wrote me a check that night for $30,000 because he loved that story. And you got to be able to have a fund sitting there somewhere for the people that you want to reach, and you can do that. So the last thing I want to mention right now is how do you reshape you as a person? And if you stop and think about this, I hope that you take some time periodically to really understand what our profession is and what your contribution is to what our profession really is. We save people's lives. And I don't just say that. I mean that. There are hurting people out there. There are issues bigger than we all know. We fix all of it. Again, if we are the department whose all-star team's beating the other team's all-star team, that's okay, but that's not what we are. It's part of what we are, but it's not all of what we are. So you have to understand the profession and take some time to think about it. Take some time to read about it. Take some time to talk to people about it. Talk to your leadership about it, of which a lot of you are leadership. The next thing, how do you reshape you? I would create a professional network like right now. People, you have this circle of people that you talk to all the time. Step out. Step out and get different perspectives. Create that network of go-to people that you can call on when there's things you want to talk about. It's like my 4 friends that I was with on Monday night on a Zoom call. I'm not that great as a leader. I'm not that great as a professional. If I have achieved things, it's because of the network of people I surround myself with. And I'm not just saying that to be self-deprecating or whatever. I really, and I don't make a lot of decisions, quite frankly. We make decisions as a group, but I'm always seeking input of people that I consider experts or different perspectives than mine so that I can rely on getting to some type of place to make a decision. So work on your professional network. This also will be uncomfortable. Email people you don't know and say, "Look, I heard about you. I heard what you're doing out in Utah, and I think it's really cool. And I was wondering how you ABCD," and reach out. And then when you can get really close relationships, that's when you have a comfortable environment and they'll call you out. We were talking about this Monday night at on the phone call with my friends. I was talking about how often people call me out for things I say that are insensitive that are wrong that I shouldn't say. And I got called out Monday night on the phone call. And we started talking about the Capitol and the everybody storming the Capitol and all that. And I said something stupid like, I told them I was explaining to my children when they were saying, it's the worst thing that they've ever seen in their lives, that I remember 1969. I've seen this before. And I mentioned in my phone call with my friends, I said, yeah, it was the worst thing ever. And Malik clearly let me understand, Tom, this was not the worst thing ever, okay? And he and I did a session in Ohio where we showed a picture of a woman being lynched, okay? And I'm going to say what happened in the Capitol was the worst thing ever. I learned. I got called out. I was teaching at a state conference about this subject, and I was talking about tolerance. And this young African-American girl, man, chewed me out. She said, oh, so you're going to tolerate me. Is that what you're saying? You're going to tolerate me? And I was like, oh, man, I didn't mean that. So I learned. My point in this is get a network of people that you're so comfortable with and they're comfortable with you that you can say the dumb things. And they're comfortable enough calling you out. When you create that culture in your life as the person you are, and Malik called me out because he knows me. He knows what's built inside of here. And he knew he was safe in calling me out because he knew how I would take it. So get a network of people that won't tell you everything you want to hear. Next, never stop learning. I don't mean CEUs, and I don't mean state conferences, and I don't mean national. No, read an article, read different newspapers from different countries. My go-to newspaper is the BBC. I think it's the most unbiased publication that I can read. The other thing I like to do, I like to see how the world's looking at our country. And it's not that good. So educate, learn things all the time. The next thing I think is really important, you have to lead. You have to find your voice. Never easy to do that. But you got to suck it up and do it anyway. Okay? You're in an important position because somebody put you in that position. Use that authority and lead people. Lead them the right way. Create that. There are leadership things you can learn here to there, but most leadership things you learn from just doing it. Making mistakes. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. But you've got to get out there. You got to find those things. I've been telling people this story for a long time, but what I like to do, still do it. Every day. 5 people. Either a quick email or a text or whatever to say something positive. Wow, that was a really good thing that you did. I got one out of the way this morning when I saw a picture of a friend of mine with his 3 children on a vacation. And I talked to him about fatherhood a little bit. And it doesn't have to be Parks and Rec. It doesn't have to be anything. And I have found after doing this year after year after year, I feel better about myself when I'm getting others to feel better about themselves. So that's one of the ways I think you can lead. The last thing I want to leave you with, just be a nice person, everybody you come in contact with. That's not hard. Don't be a jerk. Just be a nice person. Say nice things. Be respectful. And if we can imagine if everybody in the whole world did that, where we would be. I think it'd be pretty great. So I was asked to leave a little bit of time in case anybody had any specific questions that they wanted to ask. And you can unmute and ask a question, or we can do it through. It looks like Jen's ready to say something. So
Yeah,
however we want to do this is fine.
I'll start off with just a couple comments from the chat. This talk has been extremely well received. When you were talking about children don't see color; they see a possible friend.
Yeah.
We've got a book recommendation, "Do It Afraid" by Joyce Meyer.
Can you say that again, please?
Yep. Joyce Meyer, Meyer. "Do It Afraid." Then mental health first aid training, working with the youth.
Yeah. And I want to elaborate on that. Look, we talk about health and wellness. We think it's how much we weigh. No way, man. There is more mental health going on in your park system than you even know. And that's a tremendous comment. Whoever said that, we have to be thinking about that as well.
Yep. Then great point about social connection. They're seeking out. Then Devon wrote that Jessica and I had shrimp in a movie night in a very tough part of Baltimore because of what Tom's explaining right now.
Yeah. It's, wow, I love that. I love that. You know what's really cool? Uncomfortable. It is. Feeling nervous is great. I remember I said I played basketball, and I remember the jump ball at the beginning of the game. I honestly, no matter who we played, no matter what was going to be the outcome, it's the most nervous I've ever been in my entire life. And I haven't been able to duplicate that yet, and I've tried. Being uncomfortable, I think, is a really good thing. We should try.
In terms of donations, BWMC just donated a huge shade structure to one of our playgrounds a few years back.
Oh,
and
wow.
They came to us.
Yeah, love that. Love that.
Just proposed a district wellness fair at the rec to bring in the hospital, politicians, businesses, and communities together to see the great talent. The roses growing out of the concrete.
Yeah, awesome. That is so good.
And then in quotes, "Know the people, sell your greatness." That was your quote. A powerful statement.
Yeah.
And then Nancy Pfeffer, "Building relationships."
Yeah. Well, I want to also say this. I'm available. This was a 1-hour Zoom thing. That's hard because I like it better when I see you, when I'm in front of you, when I can pick on you, when we can go back and forth. And we weren't able to do that right now. But I promise you, my email is easy to find. I am easy to find. And we're, like I said, we're colleagues. We're the same. If there's anything in the world I can do to help you or give you an idea or run anything by, I just want to let you know that I'm here.
No, we appreciate that. And another recommendation here, Joan Grillis at SAMSHA praises Parks and Recreation as the primary business for trauma-informed care. That's interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tom.
Okay.
We really appreciate you coming here today and talking. I know when I was at Ogle Bay through the business and management school, I came out of your talk just feeling so empowered to build those relationships, really found purpose in what we do with Parks and Recreation. And it really changed my perspective on my entire career. So I thank you for that. And I've got Kelsey Wilson here as a former student of Tom. 10 out of 10 recommend to face the face-to-face. It is hard with the Zoom, and we definitely miss seeing each other.
Yes.
So Louis Santiago also says hi. Same old student, excellent professor.
So 8 minutes for questions.
And then
to open it up.
Yeah, and if anybody would like to ask Tom some questions, we do have a few more minutes, so you would just need to unmute your mic, and we can take something from the floor. So I'll just pause for a moment and see if we've got any questions for you. Definitely a lot of thank yous. Very inspiring, insightful. So appreciate that.
Come on, somebody ask me something.
I know.
Tom, I have a question.
Yes.
At Howard County.
Yes.
We're in a position right now where I feel like there's going to be a lot of change happening. A lot of retirees are going. I think everybody's got a new perspective on life, so people might kind of want to go try some different things with their lives and may change their careers. How do you suggest? I have a list of bullets of things that you're saying we should do, but how do you do that while also managing change culturally within your own organization?
Yeah, I think change is the best thing to happen to any organization. I really do. And I don't know if you necessarily have um, to force manage it. I think letting the change come to you is the way to do that. Sometimes you'll get a really smart staff and you all sit around and say, we need to do this, we need to do that. And you have these great ideas that the five of you have. But as you're changing, so is your community, quite frankly. I think it's good to listen to the community, find out what's going on out there, and then adjust to what their thoughts are. But what is the best thing about your comment, I believe, is you're open to it. A lot of people aren't open to change. They really aren't. But it's the only thing that kind of keeps us current is if we're open to that and we keep our mind open. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a couple more book recommendations. The Blind Spot, Hidden Bias of Good People, and then Waking Up White. And then we've got a question for you, Tom. If you're at Clemson, how does somebody find out what classes you're teaching and take one of your classes?
I teach mainly in the master's program. And if you go through the master's program, you'll get me twice. And one is the entrepreneurial class that you talked about, and the other is nonprofit leadership. And the nonprofit leadership was the how do you build a foundation? How do you do this? They are my favorite classes. And the thing that I love about the classes, the way I teach, it's project based. So in the nonprofit class, you have to build a nonprofit. So a funny story, there's this one student, she's the greatest person in the world. And so she emailed me and said she created her nonprofit. She loved going to Haiti for relief. She thought that was great and wanted to do a project on that. So she called me and she said, I'm thinking about doing this for real. And I called a nonprofit, international nonprofit, to see if I can partner with them so I can get grants. And she said, and they stole my idea. And I laughed. And she said, why are you laughing? I said, because you need to learn at 24, not 34 or 44 or 54, that without a non-disclosure agreement, you just don't give everybody your ideas. Well, long story short, she is in Haiti. She has one person in Kentucky. She's created like an Airbnb for relief efforts for like churches that go down there. So she'll find the warehouse or the places for them to stay. The guy in Kentucky recruits the groups. She's making all kind of money. And that was incubated in that class. So yeah, I'm the entrepreneurial and the nonprofit person at Clemson. Yes.
That's awesome. One question here, increased pricing and cost recovery. How do we marry the two during these times?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say this, and I know everybody's going to yell at me. I think we make cost recovery so damn complicated. I really do. I've seen these metrics come out on cost recovery. It's like, I've seen agencies not able to do it. Cost recovery is not that important. Pricing is. How do you price things is, and it all starts with costs. You got the whole thing in business is what does it cost me to do it? And then am I efficient in what I do to control the costs? The recovery of that is such that, and maybe I have that opinion because I'm like for the little guy for everything. So I will steal it from you at the water parks and the campground and my marina so I can give it away to the rural people that got nothing. I mean, I was the most Robin Hood guy you've ever seen. That's why, but if I did exact cost recovery on my business enterprises, I wouldn't have the money to go to the people that need it. So I think we make it complicated, but I would start with costs to answer that question.
And then we have another comment, Carla. Instead of doing the thing you like to do, choose to do the thing you need to work on, the
Yeah.
thing that challenges you and scares you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And in management, so let me tell you a story about that too. I've been in this game so long, I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm really bad at. And I don't try to fix my bad. I hire those around me that are really good at the things I'm bad at. So together, we're like way better. But I'm not changing. I'm really terrible at detailed things. So I have to have the detailed people around me to be able to get work done. But whoever just said that, I love being scared. I think nervous and stepping outside your comfort zone is what we all should be doing.
Absolutely. And then we have another book recommendation. The Four Disciplines of Execution is an incredible book about implementing major change while still doing the fundamentals of your job. So it's called
Okay.
Four Disciplines of Execution. Yep.
Awesome.
Well, again, Tom, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, you really impacted my career, and I hope today you've inspired our MRPA members also to go forth and serve the public, get to know our community, and work on the tough things. So,
Well, I appreciate it, everybody. And again, if you need me, let me know.
great. Well, thank you, and I'll make sure I share your contact information with everyone. So I hope you have a wonderful day in sunny South Carolina as we prepare for snow up here.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everyone.